Come to my bed tonight, human, the alien sovereign ordered me. Jonas Rourke had spent his entire afternoon trying to explain to a feather-skinned diplomat why the human phrase, circle back, did not involve actual circles, ritual spinning, or returning to some holy back. The alien stared at him with wide emerald eyes, confused at every sentence he spoke. Jonas tried again, slower this time, using exaggerated hand motions like a frustrated mime. He regretted this almost instantly, because the diplomat copied every motion in perfect, unsettling detail. By the time Jonas convinced the creature that circle back only meant talk later, he was exhausted, sweating, and strongly considering a career change, maybe something safer, like asteroid farming. He sat at his desk and took a long sip of vending machine coffee that tasted like burnt metal and regret. He was about to take a second sip when his console chimed. Not the normal chime. Not the soft, annoying one that meant more paperwork. A deep, pulsing sound, priority alert level red. Jonas froze. His screen lit up with a glowing message that made his stomach drop so fast he felt dizzy. Emergency summons, report to orbital platform Halcyon. Requested by, the Shadow Sovereign of the Draka Union. Compliance required. Transport departs in 90 minutes. Jonas blinked once. Twice. A third time. No. Nope. Wrong Rourke, he muttered out loud. This had to be a mistake. The Shadow Sovereign, Sorexia, was one of the most feared leaders in known space. She commanded an empire with ships that could tear moons apart. She crushed revolts with a single order. She negotiated treaties that terrified entire alliances. And she had requested him. Jonas Rourke. The guy who once fainted during a first aid training video. His console beeped again. This time it was his supervisor calling. Her hologram popped into the air, looking pale and tense. Rourke, she said, tell me you saw the summons. I saw it, Jonas said weakly. And I'm pretty sure it's wrong. Maybe they meant Rourke with an extra E. Or maybe. It's not wrong, she interrupted. The Sovereign specifically requested the human who translated the Draken myth tablets last year. That was you. Jonas stared at her. That was just a hobby project. I translated them because I couldn't sleep for a week. Well, she snapped, your insomnia just caught the attention of the most dangerous person within 40 light-years. Congratulations. Now pack your things and go. Don't argue. Her hologram vanished before Jonas could respond. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then panic hit him like a gravity wave. He leaped out of his chair, grabbed his emergency travel bag, every diplomatic worker had one, and sprinted out of the office. His heart pounded so hard his chest hurt. The idea of meeting the Shadow Sovereign felt like being asked to casually walk into a black hole. The transport shuttle arrived faster than his nerves could recover. Jonas boarded with trembling hands and sat between two silent guards in heavy armor. He tried not to think about all the possible reasons the Sovereign wanted him. None of them were good. The shuttle engines ignited, launching toward orbit. The Earth shrank below, a peaceful blue sphere that suddenly felt very far away. Platform Halcyon appeared ahead, a giant ring of steel and light, rotating slowly above the planet. Jonas had visited it once, years ago, for a training exam. Back then it felt impressive. Tonight, it felt like a courtroom. Or a final destination. The shuttle docked with a heavy clang. Armed escorts guided Jonas through metallic corridors filled with rushing diplomats, flashing alerts, and that strange smell every orbital station had, clean air mixed with fear. One of the guards spoke in a low voice. The Sovereign arrived 6 hours ago. She asked for you the moment she landed. Jonas nearly tripped. The guards didn't stop walking. The lights above flickered. The entire station hummed like it was bracing for something powerful. Jonas felt his throat tighten. Something huge was coming. Something dangerous. And for reasons he could not understand. He was in the center of it. Jonas Rourke had expected to be taken to a conference room or a briefing area. Somewhere normal. Somewhere with chairs that squeaked and screens that showed boring maps. Instead, the guards led him through a towering set of black doors carved with symbols he didn't recognize. The hallway beyond was dim, lit by strips of cold blue light that cast long shadows across the floor. Every step echoed. Every shadow looked alive. Jonas felt smaller with each breath. They stopped in front of a circular chamber. Massive columns rose around the edges like the ribs of some ancient creature. The room was silent except for the hum of the station's engines, deep and steady like a giant heartbeat. At the far end stood a group of armored Draken soldiers. Their dark, needle-like helmets made them look like walking obsidian statues. Their armor glowed faintly with runes that pulsed in time with their movements. Jonas swallowed hard. These were the elite of the elite, the Sovereign's personal guard. The kind that could take on a squad of armored marines without breaking stride. One of the guards stepped aside, giving Jonas a view of something he had only seen in blurry intelligence photos. Her. Syrexia, the Shadow Sovereign. She stood with her back to the room, gazing through a massive viewing panel at the curve of Earth below. Even from behind, she radiated a presence that felt impossible to ignore, like gravity made stronger, colder, heavier. Her hair fell in smooth, dark waves down her back, streaked with silver that shimmered faintly. Her long coat, made of something that looked like flowing smoke trapped in fabric, shifted with every tiny movement, as if alive. The chamber felt colder with her in it. Or maybe Jonas was just terrified. A guard nodded. "You may approach." Jonas nearly said, "No thank you," but his legs had decided to do whatever got him off this station alive. He stepped forward slowly, his palms slick with sweat. As he walked, Syrexia turned. She didn't turn quickly, or dramatically. She turned with slow, controlled precision, like someone who measured every movement and wasted nothing. Her face was smooth and pale, almost luminous under the blue lights. Dark markings curved from the corners of her eyes down her cheeks, patterns that shifted like ink under glass. Her eyes themselves were a deep silver, metallic and sharp, reflecting every detail of the room. Those eyes landed on Jonas. He froze. Breathing stopped. The entire world went silent. There was no anger in her expression. No smile. Just an intense assessment, like she was reading every thought in his head and every fear in his heart at once. "So," she said quietly, "the human scholar arrives." Her voice was low, soft, but carried easily through the chamber. It wasn't magical or hypnotic. It was worse. It was controlled, so controlled it made Jonas feel chaotic in comparison. "Why, Your Majesty," Jonas managed, bowing awkwardly. I'm honored, maybe, probably." One of the guards made a noise that might have been a cough or a laugh. Syrexia stepped toward him, her footsteps silent. When she stopped just a few feet away, Jonas felt like a small animal caught in the gaze of a predator that wasn't hungry, but was considering being hungry. "You translated the ancient Draken myth tablets," she said. "With impressive accuracy." "I had insomnia," Jonas whispered. Her eyebrow lifted slightly. "Interesting motivation." She circled him slowly, studying him like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit the picture. "Your file says you understand subtext well," she said. "That you grasp implied meaning. Hidden meaning. Unspoken meaning." "I try," Jonas squeaked. "Good." She stepped in front of him again, close enough for him to see the faint glow of the markings on her skin. "This summit requires someone who understands more than words." Jonas felt his heartbeat in his throat. "Why, me?" Syrexia tilted her head, and for a moment something softer, almost curious, appeared in her eyes. "Because you translate with emotion," she said. "Not just logic. Not many humans do that. Not many Drakens either." She leaned closer. "Tell me, Jonas Rourke, are you afraid?" His voice jumped out before he could stop it. "Very." A soft sound escaped her, a breath, not quite a laugh. "Good," she said again. "Fear sharpens the mind." She turned away, lifting a gloved hand. One of her guards stepped forward and handed her a sleek data tablet. "Tomorrow," she said, "leaders from 4 factions will gather here. They are angry, desperate, and reckless." She glanced at him over her shoulder. "You will sit beside me." Jonas almost collapsed. "As your translator?" "As the only person here who listens," she said simply. She walked toward the exit, shadows trailing her like loyal pets. Before she disappeared through the archway, she spoke one last time, her voice echoing softly. "Rest while you can, human. Tomorrow, you step into a fire that has burned for decades." The doors closed behind her with a metallic whisper. Jonas stood alone. Shaking. Breathing too fast. And realizing, with horrifying clarity, that he was now bound to one of the most dangerous figures in the galaxy. And she expected something from him. Something big. Something he wasn't sure he could survive. Jonas Rourke woke long before the station's artificial lights shifted to morning mode. Not because he felt rested. Not because he felt prepared. But because his nerves had dragged him out of sleep like a hook pulling a reluctant fish. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall while his mind replayed every second of his meeting with the Shadow Sovereign. Her gaze. Her tone. The way she spoke his name like it was a challenge and a test at the same time. He had never been this terrified in his life. And he'd once accidentally insulted a 3-meter amphibian diplomat who believed mild insults required ritual combat. But this? This was worse. He kept telling himself, "You're only translating. You're not saving the galaxy. You're not negotiating. You're just words. Just meanings. You can do meanings." His hands still shook. When the station lights finally brightened to a cold white dawn, his calm tablet buzzed. "Report to Summit Hall Alpha. Session begins in 30 minutes. Jonas tried to drink some station coffee. He spat it out immediately. It tasted like someone boiled a handful of screws in warm disappointment. He left the cup behind and hurried through the corridors. Platform Halcyon was different today. Tense. Crowded. Every species represented had doubled their security. The air vibrated with translator static, alarm beacons, and distant voices arguing in at least 6 languages. As Jonas reached the summit hall, 2 Drakengard stepped aside to let him through. Their blades hung at their sides, glowing faintly, like they were humming with impatience. Inside, the room had transformed overnight. A massive circular table sat in the center, surrounded by elevated platforms where holomaps hovered in shifting colors, star charts, territory claims, resource zones, disputed sectors glowing angry red. 4 delegations were already seated. The Tarsk Dominion, plated, insect-like beings with shimmering purple exoskeletons. They clicked their jaws softly, a sound of irritation. The Valor Alliance, tall, pale humanoids whose skin patterns pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. The Morinth Collective, gelatinous aquatic creatures suspended in mobile tanks of water that burbled with each movement. The Draken Union, represented by Syrexia herself, seated at the head of the room like a shadow sculpted from moonlight. Jonas approached her cautiously. He expected her to ignore him. Instead, she spoke without looking at him. "You are late." Jonas almost fainted. I'm 2 minutes early." "That is late," she said. He swallowed hard. Understood. A faint shimmer of amusement flickered in her silver eyes before she returned her attention to the holomap floating above the table. When Jonas took his smaller seat beside her, the room shifted. The other delegates quieted. Even the air felt heavy. A Tarsk representative clicked his mandibles sharply. "Let us begin." Our colonies suffered attacks for months. We demand immediate withdrawal from the Draken side of the rift. Syrexia didn't react. A Valor diplomat slammed a palm against the table. Your forces crossed our borders first. You lit the fuse. One of the Morinth bubbled angrily in its tank, and its translator device spat out a monotone voice. Your accusations are fluid lies. The room erupted. 4 different languages layered over each other, jagged and sharp, each one carrying a different set of threats. Jonas's translation console lit up like it was going into meltdown. Words jumped across the display so fast he could barely keep track. He adjusted settings. Calibrated tone filters. Sorted contextual markers. His hands moved on instinct alone. But the chaos grew louder. Rising. Breaking. Until Syrexia stood. She did not yell. She did not pound the table. She simply stood. And the entire room stopped breathing. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut through metal. We are not children, she said. If you wish to shout, go outside. If you wish to war, leave now and admit you came here only to threaten. If you wish to solve this, sit and listen. Silence settled over the room like dust. Jonas translated her words for the species that needed it, though each felt heavy even in the soft human tongue. The Valor diplomat lowered his hand slowly. The Tarsk representative leaned back. The Morinth tank bubbled softly in surrender. Syrexia looked down at Jonas. Display the rift projection. Jonas tapped the panel, and the hologram reshaped, zooming in on the disputed zone, highlighting hidden wormholes, trade routes, energy-rich asteroids, all glowing in shifting blues and reds. Syrexia walked through the holomap, her fingers gliding through the light. This fight is pointless, she said. Each of you wants full control. None of you can maintain it. The rift will swallow any single power foolish enough to claim it. Jonas found himself nodding. It made sense. Too much sense. So, she continued, I propose shared oversight. Equal representatives. Equal responsibility. Equal access. No empire gains everything. But no one loses all. A Tarsk delegate hiss-clicked. You ask us to trust each other? No, Syrexia said. I ask you to trust survival. Jonas translated, feeling the weight of her message settle into the room like a stone dropped into water. The delegates exchanged glances. For the first time that morning, no one shouted. No one argued. No one threatened violence. Something new entered the atmosphere. Possibility. Jonas exhaled slowly. Maybe, just maybe, this summit wouldn't end in disaster. But the way Syrexia's eyes narrowed told him she knew better. The real danger hadn't arrived yet. Not even close. The diplomatic dinner was supposed to be a calm event. At least, that was what the schedule claimed. But Jonas Rourke had already learned something important. Schedules lied. Platform Halcyon's grand dining atrium was enormous, shaped like a shimmering bowl of glass and metal. The curved ceiling displayed a live projection of space, where slow-moving stars drifted above the guests like silent watchers. Long tables filled the room, arranged with mathematical precision so no one species could claim the center spot. Jonas sat at a small translator station near Syrexia's place at the head table, trying to look invisible. It was not working. Every alien representative kept glancing at him like he was a strange insect that somehow wandered into a royal banquet. Jonas tried to focus on his translation console. It hummed softly, adjusting to the dozens of languages spoken around him. Voices layered over each other, sharp Tarsk clicks, smooth Valor tones, watery Morinth gurgles. The hall buzzed like a hive full of angry, hungry bees. Syrexia, sitting in her high-backed seat carved from dark alloy, looked calm. Too calm. Her silver eyes surveyed the room as though she already knew how the evening would unfold. Jonas wished he had that kind of confidence. He could barely hold his fork without dropping it. A Tarsk delegate began speaking loudly, its mandibles opening and closing in what Jonas recognized as bragging posture. Our Dominion harvests energy storms the way humans harvest grain, the Tarsk said. We bring strength to this summit. A Valor diplomat responded with a cool smile. Strength without wisdom is a child with a blade. The Morinth bubbled. Their translator spoke in a flat mechanical voice. Your insults lack flavor. Jonas coughed into his hand to cover a laugh. Unfortunately, Sorexia noticed. She turned her head slightly. You find the exchange amusing? She asked. He froze. And no. Well, a little. I didn't mean to. I mean. A faint glimmer reached her eyes. Continue to listen. That was the closest thing to a joke he had ever heard from her. But the tension in the room kept rising. Then a Valor dignitary leaned toward Jonas, addressing him directly. You are the human who studies Draken culture, the diplomat asked. Jonas nodded slowly. Yes, in a basic way. How long did it take you to understand their language? The Valor pressed. Jonas felt heat climb up his neck. About 6 years. The Tarsk delegate clicked in disbelief. 6 years? A child in our brood learns 2 battle dialects in 8 months. Jonas forced a small smile. Yes, well, my people are slower. And not great at battle dialects. I once tried a martial arts class and sprained my thumb tying the training gloves. Several aliens stared at him. Then, surprisingly, the Morinth tank burbled in what his translator labeled as amusement. Even Sorexia's lips twitched ever so slightly. But the moment of levity shattered when an alarm cut through the hall. A red glow flashed across the ceiling. The starfield flickered. The hum of the station deepened into a rumble. Jonas jumped to his feet as the translation console erupted with data streams. Unidentified vessel approaching, the system announced. Threat level, extreme. Pandemonium began instantly. Delegates shouted for their guards. Security teams stormed into the hall. A dozen languages crashed together in a storm of panic. Jonas scanned the incoming transmissions. His fingers flew across the panel. It's a hostile ship, he said, voice shaking. A rogue faction. They're demanding. Sorexia raised her hand, stopping him. I already know, she said quietly. She stepped forward, and the room reacted as though gravity itself shifted around her. Even the guards seemed unsure whether to breathe. Hail them, she ordered. A holographic image snapped into existence above the center table, an armored warlord from a breakaway Draken faction. His markings glowed red with fury. Sovereign, the warlord roared. You shelter a traitor. Surrender him, or we destroy the station. The delegates gasped. Jonas felt his stomach twist. His console decoded the transmission instantly. They were targeting one of the summit leaders. Sorexia's expression did not change. You fire on this station, she said calmly, and you declare war on everyone seated at this table. Give us the traitor, the warlord snarled. Or burn. Jonas felt the air tighten. His translation console buzzed with warnings. Delegates backed away from the center of the room. Sorexia looked at Jonas. Translate every word, she said softly. No changes. No softening. Jonas nodded. She stepped closer to the hologram. You claim honor, she said, her voice cold as steel. Yet you threaten innocence. You disgrace your ancestors. Leave now, or prove your stupidity to the galaxy. Jonas translated. His voice didn't shake this time. The warlord hesitated. His markings flickered. His eyes narrowed. Then. He cut the transmission. A long silence filled the room. A beam of light flickered above the ceiling projection. The hostile ship vanished into slipspace. They were safe. For now. The entire hall exhaled at once. Jonas sank into his seat, shaking with leftover adrenaline. He wasn't sure if he wanted to cry, laugh, or faint. Syrexia returned to her place as though nothing unusual had happened. Dinner continued. Conversations resumed. But when Jonas glanced up, he caught Syrexia's eyes on him. Her expression was unreadable. Her gaze was not. She was studying him. Measuring him. As if he had just proven something. Something important. Something dangerous. And Jonas realized with a cold, creeping certainty. This was only the beginning. Sleep was impossible. After the dinner incident, Jonas Rourke returned to his guest quarters still trembling. Every time he shut his eyes, he saw flashes of red alarms, the hostile warlord's furious face, and Syrexia standing tall and fearless before a threat that could have vaporized the entire station. Jonas lay on the bed staring at the ceiling lights, which flickered softly like distant stars. He felt small. Insignificant. And yet, deeply tangled in a conflict far bigger than he had ever imagined. Why him? Why did Syrexia trust him with something so delicate? How did a human translator end up in the center of a political storm? He couldn't answer any of it. By artificial dawn, Jonas felt like a ghost walking through his own body. He splashed cold water on his face and tried to flatten his messy hair. The mirror reflected a man who looked like he'd aged a few years overnight. "You're still alive," he told himself. "That's something." His comm tablet buzzed. Summit Hall Alpha, session resumes in 20 minutes. Jonas grabbed his translation device and hurried to the main chamber. The atmosphere had changed. Security forces filled the hallways. Armored patrols stood at every door. Everyone moved with urgency. Inside the summit chamber, delegates whispered in tight clusters. Their faces showed fear, suspicion, and exhaustion. Jonas found his seat beside Syrexia. She was already waiting. Her posture was straight, her expression icy calm, her silver eyes distant, like she was thinking 12 steps ahead of everyone else. "You look tired," she said without turning her head. Jonas almost tripped sitting down. I didn't sleep much." "Good," she replied. Tired minds reveal truths sharp minds try to hide. He stared at her. "That doesn't make me feel better." A very faint smile touched her lips. It wasn't meant to. Before Jonas could decide if that was a joke, the Tarsk representative slammed a clawed hand on the table. "We were nearly killed last night," the Tarsk snapped. "And you expect us to continue discussions as if nothing happened?" The Valor diplomat crossed his arms. "Your Dominion should control your own rebels." The Morinth tank gurgled angrily. "This summit is a storm with no calm." The tension thickened like fog. Jonas adjusted his console as Syrexia stood. Her presence washed over the room like a cold wave. The delegates fell silent almost instantly. "What happened last night," Syrexia said, "was not a political move. It was desperation. Desperate factions always lash out when their grip weakens." She walked around the table, her coat trailing behind her like a moving shadow. "You can allow fear to rule you," she continued, "or you can turn this moment into strength." Her gaze swept the room. "You came here to prevent war. So prevent it. Continue." Jonas translated every word, and the room seemed to breathe again. Negotiations resumed, tense but focused. Delegates argued, compromised, argued again. Jonas kept up with rapid translations, adjusting tone markers, smoothing inflammatory phrasing, and correcting subtle diplomatic traps. Hours passed. Progress was slow. Tempers stayed sharp. During a break, Jonas stepped aside to catch his breath. His fingers felt stiff from non-stop input on the translation console. He felt someone approach. Syrexia. She studied him with an unreadable expression. "You corrected 3 potentially disastrous translation errors today," she said. "You prevented misunderstandings that would have derailed the summit." Jonas blinked. "I just did my job." "You did more," she said. "You listened." The way she said it felt heavier than the words themselves. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, listening is kind of my whole profession." "Not like this," she replied softly. "Most people hear only the words. You hear the intention. You hear the silence between the words." He wasn't sure how to respond. Then she lowered her voice. "You were afraid last night," she said. "But you stayed. That is what matters." Jonas swallowed. "I thought leaving would get me killed." Syrexia's lips curved slightly. "A fair assumption. But staying showed more courage than you realize." Her hand brushed the table beside his, barely a touch, barely even contact, but enough to send a strange warmth through him. Before he could speak, an alarm beeped on her wrist device. She stepped back, her expression hardening instantly. "We resume in 5 minutes," she said. Jonas nodded. As she walked away, he felt a confusing mix of emotions: fear, admiration, and something else he couldn't name. He rejoined the summit as the delegates returned to their seats. Discussions intensified. Arguments grew harsher. But slowly, the framework of a shared agreement began to form. Jonas watched as Syrexia guided conversations with precision, redirecting hostility into cooperation, using silence like a weapon and calm like a shield. Hours later, a draft compromise hovered in holographic form over the center table. "We will finalize the details tomorrow," Syrexia announced. No one argued. The first calm of the summit had arrived. When the session ended, Jonas packed up his device. His legs trembled with exhaustion, but his mind buzzed with a strange sense of purpose. He wasn't just translating words anymore. He was translating futures. Translating possibilities. Translating hope. As he left the hall, he glanced back at Syrexia. She was watching him. Not with cold authority. Not with amusement. But with something deeper. Something unsettling. Something almost human. Jonas looked away quickly. Tomorrow would be harder. Tomorrow would be crucial. And something told him the real storm had not yet come. The final day of the summit arrived with a strange stillness. No alarms. No shouting in the corridors. No emergency broadcasts shaking the walls. Jonas Rourke stepped into the summit chamber feeling the weight of the past days pressing heavily on his shoulders. He hadn't slept much, again, but something inside him felt steadier now. Clearer. This was the day everything would either fall into place, or collapse. As he took his seat beside Syrexia, he noticed something he hadn't seen before. A softness. A subtle calm in her posture. The other delegates seemed calmer too. They exchanged tired nods instead of threats. The air, usually thick with tension, felt almost breathable. Syrexia placed a hand on the holographic control panel, bringing up the finalized draft agreement. The rift was highlighted in blue and gold rings, a shared territory with equal oversight. "This," she said, "is the structure that prevents war." Jonas began translating, his voice even and confident, smoothing the sharp edges of alien phrasing, guiding each sentence with care. The Tarsk Dominion accepted the energy-sharing clause. The Valor Alliance agreed to trade route access. The Morinth Collective demanded a few changes, but reasonable ones. Jonas watched as Syrexia addressed each concern with measured patience, her responses precise and unwavering. She didn't dominate the conversation, she steered it like a river. After hours of steady negotiation, the delegates finally signed the agreement holographically. Glowing signatures floated in the air, circling each other like merging constellations. The Zenith Pact was officially complete. A sense of relief swept through the chamber. A weight lifted. Even the Draken guards unclenched their weapons. Jonas leaned back in his chair, exhaling shakily. They had done it. For a moment, he let himself enjoy that feeling, just a translator, a small human from Earth, who somehow helped stop a multi-system conflict from exploding. But before he could fully relax, Syrexia stood. "Delegates," she said, "you have chosen wisely. The rift is no longer a battlefield, but a bridge." The room erupted with applause, human, alien, mechanical, translated applause that echoed like a chorus. Jonas watched Syrexia quietly. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. But her gaze drifted toward him for a heartbeat, a silent nod that said far more than words. When the session ended, the tired delegates filed out. Guards escorted each group, and soon the chamber was nearly empty. Jonas gathered his translation device and tried to avoid thinking about the fact that he might never see Syrexia again after today. His temporary assignment was finished. His role completed. His life ready to return to its quiet routine on Earth. He tried not to feel strange about that. He tried, and failed. As he moved toward the exit, a voice stopped him. Jonas Rourke. He turned. Syrexia stood alone at the center of the room, the glow of the holodisplays painting silver reflections in her eyes. "Come here," she said. Jonas approached slowly, sensing something different in her tone. Something softer. Something uncertain. When he stood before her, she folded her hands behind her back. "You did more than translate," she said. "You steadied the room. You redirected anger. You saw what others missed." Jonas rubbed the back of his neck. "I just tried not to panic." "Panic is not the opposite of wisdom," Syrexia said. "But you did not let it control you." Her eyes lingered on him with an intensity that forced him to look away. "Your assignment is over," she continued. "You are expected to return to Earth tonight." Jonas felt a sudden sinking feeling in his gut. Right. Yes. That's normal. "But I would prefer," she said slowly, "that you stay." He blinked. "Stay? On the station?" "No. Not on the station." Her voice grew quieter. "Stay as my advisor. My interpreter. Someone I can trust." Jonas's heart stalled. I'm just a translator." "You are more," she said. "You listen. You do not lie. You do not fear truth." A faint glimmer crossed her expression. "And you speak to me as if I am a person, not a throne." Jonas swallowed. The room felt warmer suddenly. "Closer." "What exactly are you asking?" he whispered. Syrexia stepped closer. Close enough that Jonas could see the faint pattern of shifting silver beneath her skin. "A position," she said. "Permanent. Highly ranked. Beside me in the Draken Union." She paused. "And beyond that? I am asking for honesty." Jonas blinked, confused. "Honesty about what?" Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "About whether you wish to leave." He stared at her. Leave? Return to his old life? To dusty offices, confusing idioms, terrible coffee, and days where nothing mattered? Or stay here, at the center of something vast and dangerous and meaningful? He felt something shift inside him. "I don't want to leave," Jonas said quietly. "Not anymore." Syrexia's breath caught, just slightly. No one else would have noticed. But Jonas did. "Then choose," she said, stepping back. "Earth, or the unknown beside me?" Jonas didn't need time to think. He already knew the answer. Jonas Rourke stood in the quiet hall, staring at Syrexia as if the air itself had frozen around them. Earth, or the unknown beside her? It was the kind of choice people only got in stories, not in real life. Yet here he was, shaking, exhausted, overwhelmed, and somehow standing at the doorway to a future he could barely understand. Syrexia watched him with her hands folded behind her back, but her eyes were different. Not cold. Not distant. Not calculating. They held something he had never expected from the feared shadow sovereign. Hope. And fear, very old, very quiet fear, buried under layers of steel. Jonas took a slow breath. His throat felt tight. His heart thudded too hard. Syrexia, he said softly, I don't want to go back to my old life. Not after everything that happened here. Not after meeting you. Something flickered across her face, so brief he might have imagined it. Relief. Then your choice is made, she said quietly. Jonas nodded. Yes. I want to stay. He couldn't believe the words were leaving his mouth. He expected the ceiling to collapse. He expected alarms. He expected someone to drag him away for daring to speak so boldly. But Syrexia only stepped closer, her voice low enough that the empty hall seemed to bend toward her. You understand what staying means? She asked. I think so. You will not be safe. You will be watched. Judged. Envied. She paused. And you will walk among powers that have ruled long before humans learned to read stars. Jonas lifted his chin slightly. Then I'll learn fast. Her silver eyes warmed by a fraction. Humans often do. She reached out slowly, not commanding, not testing this time, and touched a hand lightly to his wrist. It wasn't a romantic gesture. It wasn't political. It was permission. Acknowledgement. A bridge. You will have a place beside me, she said. Not behind me. Not beneath me. Jonas swallowed the lump in his throat. I'll do my best. I know you will. For a moment, they stood in silence, the glow of drifting holograms reflecting soft silver light across the room. Then Syrexia stepped back and activated a small device on her wrist. The air shimmered, and a folded set of dark clothing, Draken advisor attire, materialized on a nearby platform. This will be your uniform, she said. Designed for movement. Adaptable to different climates. It marks you as part of my council. Jonas ran his fingers across the smooth, dark fabric. It felt alive, shifting faintly like it recognized being touched. It's really nice, he said. Syrexia raised an eyebrow. It is a symbol. Not decor. Right. Symbol. Important symbol. Jonas. Yes. Her voice softened. You do not need to pretend to be someone else. Not with me. His cheeks warmed. He wasn't used to people seeing straight through him. She continued, you have something many warriors, leaders, and scholars lack. What's that? Heart. Jonas blinked rapidly. Is that good? Essential. Before he could respond, the hall doors slid open and two Draken guards approached. Their armor gleamed like obsidian heated under moonlight. They bowed slightly. Sovereign, one guard said. Your vessel is ready. The council awaits your return. Syrexia nodded. Prepare another berth on the ship. Jonas Rourke will accompany me. Both guards stiffened. Their eyes widened just slightly. Drakens rarely showed surprise, but the shock was unmistakable. Yes, Sovereign. They left quickly. Jonas exhaled slowly. They didn't look very excited to add me to the passenger list. They will adjust, she said simply. In time, they will respect you. In more time, they will depend on you. That's a lot of pressure. You handle pressure well. I nearly fainted yesterday. And yet you did not. Jonas couldn't help a small smile. I'm starting to think you've been watching me way too closely. She didn't deny it. She didn't even look guilty. I observe what matters, Sorexia said. She walked toward the exit, then paused and turned back to him. Come, she said. There is much to do. Jonas followed, his steps echoing in the quiet hall. As the doors opened, the full view of space spilled across the walkway, the planet Earth hanging below like a blue jewel, the Draken flagship looming ahead like a dark, majestic shadow with wings. He felt a tightness in his chest, not fear this time. Something else. Something daring. He was leaving everything he knew. He was stepping into a future built on danger, politics, and alliances older than his species. But he wasn't alone. Not anymore. Sorexia slowed her pace, waiting for him to catch up. Jonas, she said softly, this journey will not be easy. I never expected it to be. Good, she replied. Easy things rarely matter. He looked at the planet behind them, then at the endless galaxy ahead. A translator from Earth. A shadow sovereign from a legendary empire. Against all logic, their paths had joined. And the universe, vast, dangerous, unpredictable, suddenly felt like a place where Jonas belonged. He stepped onto the Draken ship beside her. The doors closed behind them. Their story was only beginning.